go through the Belbin Team Reports. We're going to go through page by page so that you can understand how best to use them with a team. What I would love to do is just say that we will be recording this and sending it out, so don't worry about taking any notes. Get your cup of tea there, coffee, whatever time of day it is for you, gin and tonic, and just listen and enjoy. If you have any questions at all, please put them on the chat. Please don't put them on the Q&A, due to the fact that I can only look in so many boxes at once. I am here on my lonesome in the Belbin headquarters just outside of Cambridge. So, yeah, there is only so much that I can do. Before we go any further, I suppose I should introduce myself. My name is Jo Keeler, and I am one of the managing partners here at Belbin. I have been here now for 19 years. How often? It just makes me 19, crikey. I didn't think I was going to last 6 months, but here I am. And I would love to share experiences with you about using the team report. So instead of it just being quite a dry go through, I'll try and give you some of the experiences that and top tips that I've picked up along the way. And Neil's here. Hello from Bahrain. Hello, Neil. How are you? So before we go any further, let's find out a little bit about you. I'm going to see if I can do this. I've got a poll here. What I would love you to do, for those of you who know Belbin, those of you who've got your reports, I would love you to answer this. This should be in front of you now. I would just like you to put a little tick or click where your top 2 or 3 Belbin team roles are. Because this is going to give me a lovely idea as to whether or not I can go completely off tangent, whether or not I'm going to have to stick to the script. For those who know me, obviously there is no script. No, there is really. Let's see where we've got there. So about half of you have voted so far. And it's important we don't just put our top 1 down, isn't it? Because we're not just one team role. We are a beautiful, diverse mix of all of these team role behaviours. So we need to ensure that we look at the top 2 or 3. Okay, I think 85% of you, should I leave it? We've got a lot to get through. I'm going to end that now. I'm going to end it. And I'm going to share the results with you. So I am going to say there are 24 of you voted, which is fantastic. I'm going to try not to knock my flip chart over. So implementer, I'm going to put 7. I'm going to put 8 for plant. Resource investigator, surprise, is in double figures, is 10. Coordinator, 7. 5 for shaper. Okay. 4 for monitor evaluator. Out in front with a big 11 is team worker. We have completer finisher, 5. And specialist, we have 7. So thank you very much for sharing that with us. What does that look like? What does that look like to us? Predominantly social roles, the resource investigator, team worker and coordinator. So you're interested in people. It's probably why you do what you do. We still have some action roles down here. And I should imagine with those with got a quite high implementer, you are looking at ways that you can write down bullet points, the process of going through the reports. And hopefully we'll be able to help you with that. Specialist remains quite high. It's that depth of knowledge that you're all after. Monitor evaluator, quite low. Plant, quite high. So we've got to have lots of ideas going here. So I can go a little bit off tangent. You're not going to scream at me too much. Completer finishers, shapers, they're always quite low when we do these webinars, and I think it's because they're too busy working. The completer finisher hasn't got time because they've got too much to get on with and finish, and the shaper is just cracking on. Things to do, targets to meet. So this is a great way of just looking. You're not a team, you're a group of people, all have a common interest in Belbin. But it gives you a feel, doesn't it, for the team already when we start putting those up there. Right, I'm going to start sharing my screen. Let's show you some slides. That's what we're here to do. Okay, so this is what we'll be up to, a page-by-page explanation of your Belbin team report. And that's me. Let's just remind ourselves as to what a Belbin team role is. It's very important we remember that it is a tendency. It is not an absolute. It is not an exactness. Just because your team role report has turned out like this time doesn't mean it's going to be the same next time. And we're also talking about behaviour. We're not talking about who you are, we're talking about what you do, how all of these things manifest themselves into the workplace. So the way that we behave, the way we interact with others, the way that we approach our work. This is what a Belbin team role is. I'm not going to spend too much time going through the 9 team roles. It looked like you all were clicking buttons earlier. But really what we have the implementer, which is the one who's wonderfully organised, the ones with the post-it notes, the one who likes process, the hard-working, the disciplined one. We have the completer finisher. They're always polishing and perfecting, the anxious one who never wants a mistake to be made. We have the coordinator, the conductor, the one who knows what the music's meant to be sounding like and how to get everybody involved to make that happen. We have the team worker, the one with the empathy, the understanding, the listening ear, the one who cares, and they care about us because we're all human beings. The resource investigator, the one who knows somebody else, who's a great person for ideas and bringing ideas to the team that they have found from outside. They're the ones who are bringing the ideas into the team. They've perhaps borrowed, stolen, whatever word you want to use. Then we have the monitor evaluator, the one who is taking the enthusiasm out of the decision-making process and weighing up the pros and the cons to make sure that the right decisions are being made. And then we have the plants, who are also bringing lots of ideas to the team, but they're not from anywhere apart from inside here, because they're coming up with novel and new ways of looking at things. They're great problem solvers. They're really bringing originality to the team and with their ideas. We have the shaper, the one who wants to get to be yesterday, who's constantly saying, come on, let's get this done, who brings that energy to the team and makes sure everybody is going to achieve objectives. And then we have that specialist, the specialist which has a real love of learning, a thirst for knowledge, and who knows a lot about quite a narrow area, normally very high professional standards. We have these 9 different behaviours, and each of us can play each role. Some of those roles are easier to play than others, and we are, like I said before, a wonderful mix. But we know for a team to be really successful, you need all of these 9 behaviours available, and you need them at your fingertips. I'm just going to stress a little bit more about what team roles measure, because I think it's such an important point, and it's something that regardless of what webinar, regardless of what workshop that I am running, I tend to really labour the point that we're looking here at behaviour. Your DNA is fixed, your personality is fixed, but it's still under the waves, isn't it? It's not necessarily visible to everybody else. And then you have your behaviour, your boat on the top, which is moving and it's changing depending on the situation, depending on the team. So you can't expect this to be the same. I'm labouring it even more now because we're looking at team reports, and it shouldn't be that the same person plays the same role in every team that they are going to be part of, because different things will be required of them and the environment and everything will be different. So it's really important that we, emphasise the point we're looking at behaviour. And for those of you who want a little bit more depth, there are so many things that can influence our behaviour. Obviously, our personality is a big factor there. Our mental abilities, our level of intellect, also our emotional intelligence there, our EQ, is as important as our IQ. Our values and motivations, what gets us up in the morning, and why do we do what we do? I mean, this changes. I know that I haven't got the same values and motivations I had when I was 18 or 20 or 30 or 40, or we'll stop there. All of these things really change the way that we behave. And our experience, our life experience, but also experience of different managers, different teams, different organisations, different working colleagues, all of this, again, is an influence. And what we have now is our external influences, which normally I describe as something like mergers or something that's out of your control. But at the moment, we've got probably the largest external influence that any of us have experienced, really, in the situation we have with the the worldwide pandemic, this really is affecting the way that we behave. It's affecting our environment a lot. Some of us are working from home. Some of us are the only people in the office. So again, this is going to change the way that we behave. And of course, the more we understand about those team roles, we learn more about each of these 9 team roles that can again inform our behaviour. Perhaps more consciously, we make more of a conscious decision to change our behaviour in the workplace. And why is this all useful? I love this one from Meredith. I don't think it's going to come in today. He came into one of the webinars a little while ago. He might do. He's in his own office just down the way. And sometimes he pops in, who knows. But I love this. Basically, just putting these people together and saying, right, you're all now working as a team. It really isn't enough. There's so much more to it than that. And we need to work out what it is that this team is meant to do. So the first thing I would always say is just pause and think, right, why are we doing this? Why are we running this team workshop? Why am I interested in this team? What is its purpose? What is its objective? Make sure the team knows its structure, has clarity there, everybody knows what they're doing. We want to make sure that members are chosen for what they can contribute for dynamic interaction, shared leadership. All of these things are crucial. This is a different webinar. We've recorded this one already. It's on our YouTube channel. But a team needs all of these things. But most importantly, my goodness, it needs a purpose. It needs to know what it is that you're doing. How can you find out the purpose of a team? Well, if you're the manager, it should be quite easy. You should be really clear. But if you're being brought in to be able to work with a team, sometimes, and in fact, I think this may happen actually with a manager as well, is sometimes we're not entirely sure what it is that we need to be doing. We need to have some more clarity around that. We have these wonderful conversation cards that there's, I can't remember how many there are, about 30, 35, and they've all got different questions on them, and they're all great questions to be able to share with a team to really work it out. What is their endpoint? What is it that they want to achieve? I'm just going to stop sharing my screen a minute, actually, because I wanted to show you something. Let me see, where is it? Here it is, share screen again. I put some of these questions on here. I don't know if anybody's seen this. It's called wheelofnames.com, and it's a free website, and you're meant to put people's names in it, and it's like, who's going to go next, and you press it and somebody's name comes up. But I put some of the questions up there because I think this might be quite a nice way, especially virtually, if you're working with a team and they're not entirely sure, what they want their objective to be. Hang on, wait for it, here we go. Do people's Belbin Team Role strengths align with the job they are doing? You can get rid of the sound. I don't know if the sound was there for you. It's most off-putting, actually. But you can ask them. You can ask them these questions, and you can keep going. What is most relevant to them at the time? And you can make these quite specific. You could go sit down with the manager first, or if you're not sitting, use this kind of just to get them thinking. What are the timescales? Who knows? Just thought I'd show you that because I thought that was quite fun, a great way of working out how you can work out what the objective is of the team. Here we go, we're back to the slides now. Okay, I think there's another quote. Here it is. Those of you who know me again will know that Katzenbach and Smith, The Wisdom of Teams, is one of my favourite books ever. And what they're saying is, real teams, when they've harnessed this common purpose and goals, they know what they're there to achieve, that actually the need for us to distinguish ourselves as individuals and what we can contribute individually is actually heightened, because we all know we're going to have to be the best we possibly can as an individual for the whole team to work and to hit those objectives. So another reason why teamwork is so incredibly important. So in Belbin Team Role terms, what do we say makes an effective, get my teeth back in, an effective team? Well, we need to make sure that we have representation of those 9 team roles. You don't need them all of the time. Again, it depends what the team is there to achieve. Some team roles are needed in different places. So just because you don't have all 9, don't worry. That's a conversation. We'll talk about that later. And of course, within that team, everybody has their individual Belbin reports. They've found out their strengths, their weaknesses, they've found out what other people think, because obviously they've used the observer assessments. So people understand their impact and their contribution, but they need to understand the contributions of others as well. And what they also need to look at for a really effective team are those relationships within a team which are really going to help exploit strengths and really contain those weaknesses. So that's really what the team reports are for. They're to help everybody understand everybody else's contributions and to ensure that those relationships are as strong as possible. So as a team, you know, what we need to do, we need to look at understand these gaps and overlaps in the team of those team roles. So we need to look as if we were behind me on this team role circle, where are the overlaps? You know, we've got 5 potential shaper contributions here. Is that going to be a problem? It's not going to be a problem because I'm in charge and I have all the buttons at my control. But potentially it could be quite difficult. And so we need to work out who is going to make all these contributions, when they need to make them. What are you missing? Do you need somebody? What do you have too many of? How are you going to manage? And are there is there any evidence of cloning? Do you tend to be recruiting people into the team like you? So these are all questions and all reasons what you should be looking at really for those teams and going through the team reports. So without further ado, enough of the preamble, I can hear you say. Let's start looking at these reports page by page. If you've got some with you, brilliant. Take a look at them and we'll go through together. If you have any questions, I will try and answer as best I can. Right, so here we have the Belbin team reports. The team reports are available if you have 3 or more people who have got their individual reports. So all of this, you have to have the individual reports first to create the team report. I know it sounds logical, but sometimes it can get a little confusing. If you want to know more about the individual, the Belbin individual reports, see, it's quite confusing. We conducted a webinar on that a few weeks ago, and it's available on our YouTube channel. I will put the link to that in the email that we send out. Now, if you want to get the most from these team reports, you should have 15 or fewer people involved. Obviously, we recommend a team size of 4 to 6 because that's the most efficient size of team. It's not just us saying this, a lot of other people say this too, but we are also realists. So we will let you include up to 15 people. We will actually let you include the entire organisation, but not all of the pages will be available to you. So if you're thinking, my goodness, there's some people missed off my report here, it's because we'll be taking just the first 15 names. Okay, the first page. That first page is for you as the facilitator. I always think this is my sitting on a train or waiting for everybody to connect to the webinar sheet, and I will go through this with a highlighter pen and I will look at the gaps. No, not necessarily the gaps actually, I will look at the common factors. So I will check to see whether or not people's self-perception is relatively similar to the overall observation. So all of those observations put together and then see what difference that's making to the overall. And I will just double check and just have a quick look. And if there are any that worry me, not necessarily worry, but any which look like they might have quite a confused profile, where the observers see something completely different to themselves, what I tend to do is then quickly go back to their reports and just, familiarise myself with the individual report a bit more, because I'm sure that there'll be questions coming up about that. So this is the one for the facilitator, really. It's just a check. At this point, I will just say that I think most of these reports are just for the facilitator. I personally don't give them out to teams. We tend to work through the content and I have them as a reference point. I bring certain bits out of them as and when required. And I'll explain why that is as we go through each of those pages. Okay. The first page. Team contribution. So this can only be generated for 15 or fewer delegates. team members. And what it is going to go through is it's going to show you who is the strongest for each of these particular team roles. It's then going to show you who's quite strong and then who's not bad. And it will make sure that everybody's name is mentioned on here. So if, for example, if we look on here at the resource investigator, when the team needs to exploit new opportunities, turn to John P and Chris R. We know that John is going to be a slightly higher percentile for resource investigator than Chris R. Again, if we look at the coordinator, we know that John P, it's got that quite high. Also involve Lee and Chris, they have it slightly lower. But everybody will be included on this report. It's one for the whole team. However, if there is nobody showing any of a particular team role in abundance, we are going to mention it because it's an important thing that you know. So here, for example, we have the fact that there is nobody who has a particular high completer finisher. We could just put somebody in there, the person with the highest percentile score, but actually we don't. If we feel that that is particularly low, nobody's got it to a great deal of abundance, we will indicate it because that's an important thing to take into consideration. Again, as you can see here, it tells you that the report is based on self-perception plus observer assessments. When you generate the team reports, you can choose the data source, you can choose just self-perception inventory or self-perception inventory plus the observers. You can't choose for some with and some without. It's either all or nothing. So just bear that in mind as well. So that's the first page. The second page is the favourite, the team role circle. And here what we're doing is putting initials of everybody's top 2 team roles into the team role circle. Again, this is only for 15 or fewer people. As you can imagine, it gets quite crowded with more than 15. So that's, and again, that's more looking at group dynamics than team dynamics. Now I'm just going to come off the screen here because I think there's some important things to mention when it comes to that particular page. And I don't know if many of you can think why just putting your top 2 team roles could be slightly misleading. I personally think it's a great one to get the conversation going, and when we have we use this actually as an exercise all of the time at Belbin. But what you do find is you'll start getting this picture, and instead of obviously numbers, we would have names. So let me put some names here instead. Let me put, you see, I just automatically put myself in here. Let me put Pete. Pete's still furloughed, if any of you know him. I'm having to deal with all of his work as well. It's a bit of a nightmare. Pete. Let's have a look at Jill. Okay, Jill. Let's just take that 11 out. So you start putting the names in there. Now, the problem you can have, and hopefully you can see this a little bit, is that Jill and Pete both have team worker really highly in their profile. But does one person have it slightly higher than the other? It could be that Pete, although it's in his top 2, say, it could be that Pete's is only in the 50th percentile, whereas Jill's is in the 75th. In fact, I know Jill's is probably about 99, actually, because she's flipping brilliant. But anyway, by just saying the top 2, it doesn't give you the whole picture. So what you may want to do is start filling in this circle when you're facilitating, is to start with the person with the highest percentile score. So the top 2 is a great starting point, and I think if you're doing this and you want to ensure that everybody is included, start there, start as it is with the team report. But otherwise, I personally would start with saying, right, everybody put them in, let's start with everybody in the 80th percentile. Then, or higher, then the 75th, then higher, then the 70th and higher. And you'll start to see a slightly different picture being formed. Of course, the problem there is if somebody has a very flat profile, they may not appear on here at all. And then that's to work out how to get that person to feel that they are contributing to the team. Because there can be many reasons for that flat profile. As we know, there's lots of reasons for that. And again, that's on the last webinar. Yeah, oh, absolutely. One of the other reasons is because those weaknesses are quite important as well. One other way you can do this, if you want to make it, that step further, is you can ask everybody to put their names on their least preferred roles as well. And then you get a picture of real distinct, is there a real clear sort of culture within the team as to, does everybody have the same weaknesses? Sometimes you find that to be true. How important is it for me, Joe, to really know and get on well with Pete, because he's got it in his top. You start identifying those relationships that you're going to need for the team to be really, really successful. So absolutely. Let me just go to the Q&A here. If you wouldn't mind, if instead of putting questions in the Q&A box, if you wouldn't mind putting them in the chat, that would be fabulous, because I'm quite likely to miss them in the Q&A. I just happen to see. Where can we get Team Role Circle on the flip chart? Off our website. I think you'll find they're an absolute bargain. Highest percentile, absolutely. That's what we're looking at. We're looking at the percentile scores to go up here as opposed to the positioning. Brilliant. God, I feel that you'll probably know more than me. Right, let's go back to sharing my screen. Where am I? Here I am. Share. Okay, so this is, like I said, a great starting point, but use it just as that. And what we want people to do is to feel comfortable sharing. In fact, actually, crikey, I always do this. One of the first things you need to ask the team is, are they happy for them to share their team role preferences, or the order of their team roles. It's not necessarily a preference if you've got observer assessments in there as well. Just check. You're not asking them to show all of their report, all of the stuff which is personal to them, but just say their top 2, 3, 4 and the percentile scores and the bottom ones. Because otherwise you're going to start and somebody's not going to want to join in, and you've ruined it for everybody. Please check. Now, interestingly, what I'm trying to do here is give you some real practical tips as well, as opposed to just going through the pages. I thought that might be quite useful. And I was working with the University of Warwick a few weeks ago, and they needed an exercise. And I thought, excellent, we'll do the Team Role Circle exercise. They're new to Belbin. They had 150 people all split into different teams. They were all doing it simultaneously. And the first time we did it, we uploaded the Team Role Circle onto a Miro, M-I-R-O board, which allows everybody to edit at the same time. And we wanted them to start looking at themselves as a team, where the gaps and where the overlaps were. But actually, it didn't help that much. I think it was the technology. So I adapted this team contributions page here into an Excel spreadsheet. Let's see if it's going to come up. Here it is. And it's kind of an online equivalent of the team circle and the team role contributions. And we've got everybody to write their names if they were over the 90th percentile, the 80th, the 70th, or the 60th. And it was really useful because instead of just having the team role there, it says, when new line of thought is desired, ask. Who should we ask when we need new opportunities? When we really need somebody to get the overview and orchestrate that team effort, who should we ask? And so it was getting them to think of the practical reasons why you need to find everybody's team roles as well. And what I did find particularly interesting is we just put this on a Google Docs, which everybody had access to, and people found it a lot easier to use on an online environment. So we just made one of these for each of the teams. Each had access to their particular Google document, and they could all go in, as could I, and I could monitor it and see what was happening, write little notes to them in one of the cells. So I just thought I'd mention it there, because there are ways in which you can use this information to really get people to start thinking, how is it that we can use everybody within the team? Right, back to the official version now. So we've had the contributions and we've got the team circle. Both of those are for 15 or fewer people. Now, this page is something that you can use with more people. I love this, and Deborah, and I don't know if many of you know Deborah McGovern, she uses this all the time, because it's wonderful when you are looking at the future of the team, the longevity, the sustainability. You're really looking to see, who do you have and how much of that role for the team are they carrying. Let me explain you in a little bit more detail. Here you have in red, you have the red bars, and they are looking at the average for the team, so the average percentiles. In blue shows the percentile score for the person who has the highest amount of that particular team role, and it will tell you who the highest for each particular team role is at the bottom there. So you can see that the highest we have for shaper, there we go, is bang on the 90th percentile, and we know that that's John P. So John P is the strongest there. So what, you might say, what does that mean? Well, it means that if you look at the difference between the top of the blue and the top of the red, you can see how much of that team role is being taken care of by just one person, or perhaps just by a couple of people. And so if that person were to go into a different team, be seconded or whatever, that's going to have an effect on the overall team. So for here, whoever monitor evaluator is, that's Sam T. If Sam were to move, he's probably taking quite a lot of the monitor evaluator away from the team. So it's something really to look at succession planning. It's to look to see what impact it would have if somebody were to leave. The other thing you can use, the other thing, that wasn't particularly well articulated. You can also use this page of the report by looking at those blue bars, because ideally, in a high-performing team, you want somebody who is over the 80th percentile for each of those team roles. So again, you can see where are we lacking on people who are really strong examples. So here we have a problem, potentially, a potential problem with the lack of completer finisher. So although Nita is the highest scoring completer finisher, it looks at about, 57th percentile there. It means actually that she may come under, or he may come under a lot of pressure when trying to fulfill that role, because it's not a huge strength. I mean, obviously it's there, but perhaps when you're next recruiting into this team, finding somebody who has a higher percentile for completer finisher might be useful. Or it could be that this team doesn't have to worry about the detail. There's another team to worry about that. This may be all to do with the ideas or the planning or so forth. Perhaps it doesn't matter that there isn't a strong completer finisher here, but it's worth having the conversation, and it's worth being aware of this. Next page. This page is looking at those strong examples. It's looking at all of those blue bars above the 80th percentile. For those of you who perhaps are not so familiar with the concept of a strong example, at Belbin, we feel you're not just there to identify your top roles, you're there really to help grow, learn and develop so that you can be the best you possibly can. So we try to recommend that if you are a strong resource investigator, why not work harder to become the actual best, become over the 80th percentile. When we talk about percentiles, it means that we're comparing you to a sample database. We have a database of 9,500. It's an international database. It is mainly English speaking, but we have been checking this recently, and we haven't had to change the database for 2 or 3 years due to the fact there hasn't been that much change. We will be looking at it actually after this pandemic has well, will it ever go? We don't know. Just to see if the changes that are being made to the world of work are having an impact as well. But anyway, I digress. We are comparing your score to a database of 9,500 others. If you're in the 80th percentile, that means that only 20% of that database are scoring higher than you for that particular team role. So it means that you are showing it far more than the average. This is a real strength. And this is one of the reasons why I wouldn't leave this report potentially with the team, because it could be that somebody doesn't appear on it. It could be that somebody's name isn't on there and somebody else's name, John P., for example, here, is on it more than once. In fact, it's on it 3 times. So you need to be quite aware of that. Well, what is the point? Well, the point is that these are people who most definitely should be playing those particular roles, because they're going to play them better than anybody else. But it does also show where there needs to be areas for development, for training, for growth, for other people, so that they do appear on this list, one could argue. What it does show, as we'd already highlighted from the last page, is that there's no strong example of either the plant or the completer finisher. Again, does that matter? What is it that the team's there to do? What are the objectives? Have the conversation. But if you find that it does matter, what as a team are you going to do to try and ensure that you do find somebody with a stronger example? So who do we have here? Chris in the plant. What can Chris do, who's currently, around 72, 73? How can we help develop Chris so that he can be an even stronger example of the team role of plant? There's really lots of food for thought here. And I think with these team reports, before you just dive in and just show them to the team, it's important to know whereabouts it's fitting with the overall objectives of the team. What is it that you really are looking for? Does it matter? Do you need to show the strong examples at this point? Is it a little bit too political? Is the fact that the manager of the team doesn't appear, is that going to be too much of a hot potato, so to speak? Do you need to do a bit more groundwork first? I don't know the answers, but these are the questions that you need to be asking. I love this page. This page can be used for any number of people. And in fact, we've used this page and generated reports for large multinationals so that they can look at departments. So we've put together pages of over 3,000-4,000 employees to get a real feel for the culture of the organisation. So what this page is really showing you is that culture. What at the best case scenario and the worst case scenario. As you can see, this is just looking at the averages here. But what we're doing is giving you a feel for the team. So in this case, the social qualities. You can see that because you've got coordinator and resource investigator there as those top two roles. It's also saying here the key to success will depend on finding a progression from words to action. Perhaps we need to check those action words. And what's the detail going to be like? Is it all just going to be a lot of talk and actually not seeing anything through? I like this one because you can ask the team, is this a reflection of the team? Is this a reflection of the culture you want it to be? Looking at the best and the worst case scenarios, how is that going to align with your current projects that you're working on? The fact that you may have a project that is absolutely imperative that you have, attention to detail. What are you going to do as the team to be able to ensure that doesn't scupper everything? So again, these are great conversations to be had. Now, if you had observer assessments, this next page is looking at all of the words that were ticked for everybody who's involved in the team and how many times they were used. Again, do these words align with the team's overriding values, their mission, their vision, whatever it is that you want to call it? Do they know that they're seen as quite outgoing and encouraging of others? That actually they're quite outspoken, but they're helpful at the same time? Where are those list B words? Where are those ones that are in italics? Let's look in there. I really should put my glasses on. The fact that actually they haven't got an italicized word very high up at all, but impulsive is there. Is that a concern? Is that a worry that impulsive, they've got 12 ticks and it's just a team of 6 people? Ask the questions. One exercise you can do here is actually put those words, the top, say, 10 words that are appearing on that report, and put them on really large Post-its, the ones that are really expensive. Put the words and put them on one of the walls in a meeting room. Or post them behind you. If you're doing this online, it's fine. Make sure you have a flip chart at all times. I have to say, I find the flip chart behind me invaluable, even when I'm doing something remotely. And then ask them if they are the 10 words that they would like other people to know. That's how they describe themselves. Then on another flip chart, ask them to write the 10 words that perhaps they would prefer, how they think they should come across. And then it's the debate. Which ones do you want to swap? And how are What are you going to do as a team to become, in this case, I don't know, a little less outspoken? Do you know, I think sometimes as a team we may not be that approachable because we're a bit outspoken. And although people do see us as encouraging and helpful, we don't want that to get in the way of that. So what are we going to do as a team to get the outspoken down, but actually let's have a look here, diplomatic to come up a little bit higher? What do we need to do? Again, I don't have the answers, but these are all the questions that you could ask the team. I've run a workshop, it was a few years ago now actually, with a pharmaceutical company. And I say it's a few years ago. I used to work in a pharmaceutical company. I used to be a sales rep. I used to go around to doctors in hospitals and tell them all the benefits of different medicines. And when we did that, we had what we used to call a detail aid. And a detail aid was a A4 book. It was spiral bound, and it had all of the studies and all of the research as to why the medicine that I was selling was far better than anybody else's. You always had, in fact, it only ever came out when your manager was with you, but that's beside the point. I worked with a pharmaceutical company, and as a team, I worked with a team who had quite a low profile, but actually did an amazing job and needed, I think, to be applauded more for that. So we got them to use these words and the descriptions here on the team role averages to write their own detail aid so that they could use that to show the rest of the organisation what it was that the team did and what their strengths were using all of this information. And it was a great exercise actually. People really got into it, and you could see them feeling really proud actually of the way in which they could project themselves to the rest of the organisation. But that was just one thing that I've done. The words, again, is another great example of things that you can do here. And like I said, I love this team role averages, especially for larger numbers, because that's really where you can see where some cloning comes in. This one is relatively, it's got a bit of a step there, but it's relatively flat. You do see some which are really noticeably biased towards some of those team roles. And if you see that, even when the numbers increase, because you expect as the numbers to increase, the flatter the profile normally gets. But if that still seems quite marked, there are conversations to be had. What is our recruitment policy? Do we need to be looking at some of the others? What do we value as an organisation? Okay, I'm going to just stop sharing my screen here. Does anybody at this point have any questions about those team reports? Is everybody okay? Is anybody still there? That's one question, isn't it? Anybody sort of like dropped off? No? Marvellous. So they are those team reports. Now the team reports, to be able to access them, if you have Interplace, which is the full system, which I know a few of you are there, you know, you've got Interplace. These are all free. You can just keep generating these till the cows come home at no additional cost. If you don't have them and you're just doing things as what we call like more of a bureau service, a pay-as-you-go, these are just £75 each. I think that's incredible value for the conversations it can start with you. Oh, thank you. I should have guessed there's high team worker, isn't there? People are saying, yes, you're all still here. Thank you. Okay, any other questions? Here we go. The italics. How can we better use them? That's an interesting question. When people complete the observer assessments, there are two lists of words. There is a list which relates to all of the strengths of the team roles, and that's the list A, and there's list B words, which relates to all of the associated weaknesses of the team roles. And you expect both lists to be ticked because none of us are perfect. We all have weaknesses. Of course we do. It's the flip side of the strengths. How can we be brilliant at something if we don't allow a little bit of slack elsewhere? So one thing you could look at is looking at the italics. How visible are they within the team? Because if they are all right at the very bottom, perhaps one could question the validity of the observations being made. Were they all just being awfully nice to one another? And we've seen that. We see that with teams, is that they think, oh, this is a team exercise. They're not entirely sure why they're doing it. Let's all just be nice and tick all the nice words. We won't do any list B words. I don't like to, I feel a bit uncomfortable. So it could give you a feel for the culture, could give you a feel for what you're about to walk into as a facilitator or as the manager. So you could use that as an indication of, how how are they feeling as a team? If they're quite high up and there's quite a few, that's fine. But again, I would work to see what is the communication like between the individuals within that team. If there are too many of those weaknesses really coming up into the top 10, the top 20, perhaps it's time to just sit back and start, let's review this again. What are our objectives? Let's go back to basics. What is everybody there to, and what are they meant to do? Because sometimes we find the italics go up when you are asked to perform a task that doesn't align with your strengths. I know that I have lots and lots of list B, completer, finisher words ticked occasionally, and it's when I have to play that role, and I'm really terrible at it, and I try so hard, but my weaknesses are far more visible in that situation. And it could be that that's happening. So it could be a conversation from those conversation cards or the wheel. Has everybody got a role within the team that is aligning to their Belbin Team Role strengths? So that's one way we could use that. I hope that has been a decent answer to the question. Okay, so they're the team reports. We've still got about another 5 or 10 minutes, so we've got time now to go through and actually look at the working relationship reports. And why is this important? Well, the working relationships reports are really important because it's showing individuals within that team. I had the absolute fortune to work for a very long time with a wonderful chap called Barry Watson. Neil, I know you know Barry probably better than myself. And Barry always talks about the fact that we enjoy working with people who are like us. But actually, we're really effective when we work with people who are completely different. So what we need to do is stop enjoying ourselves so much in the workplace. And we need to find those working relationships that mean that we're going to have a really productive outcome. That means that we are going to be far more effective. Oh, and of course, Barry introduced you to Belbin, didn't he? That's a very interesting story. Sitting on a park bench, I believe, with pigeons or something, but we won't go there. Right, share screen right now. Let's have a look. Where was I? Here I was. There we go, share. Right. The working relationship reports are also incredibly useful for the managers because you're the person managing everybody within the team. What relationships do you really want to see blossom and which ones do you just need to keep a bit of an eye on? And do you know everybody, all the strengths and weaknesses of everybody in the team? Collectively, the strengths and weaknesses in the team. What behaviours do you want your next recruit to bring to the team? How do you manage everybody? Because again, and we'll look at these, you can use the working relationship reports for this, do you manage everybody exactly the same, regardless? Do you manage everybody how you want to be managed? Or do you manage everybody how they would like to be managed? There is a big difference there. And how do you allocate work in your team? Are there lots of list B words quite high up? Perhaps we should start really reviewing the allocation of work to everybody. And for managers, just understanding these reports, understanding Belbin really can help them make that transition from being a good process manager to being an outstanding people manager. Let's have a look at these reports. So when you're looking at the Belbin working relationship reports, you can only have a report for 2 people, no more than 2. And what you need to do is you need to specify the relationship, because obviously that's going to have a real big impact on the advice that we give. So here we have Sam T and Chris R. I really need to get some new sample reports. I'm fed up with these names. Anyway, what we're looking here is the fact that these are colleagues. And you can see Sam there is in blue and Chris is in red. And what we're going to do in the reports is that we're going to give an overview based on the top roles and looking at the second roles. So here we have potential to be successful as a well-organised, outward-looking duo capable of quick and decisive action. An efficient mini-team provided that both parties know each other well. And you can see that because Sam obviously is really organised, has got that high implementer, whereas Chris has got that high resource investigator. Now, those of you who know Belbin Team Roles quite well, I'm just going to stop sharing my screen again. I knew this was going to happen. Is we're looking at opposites here. So your resource investigator and your implementer. I mean, you can be in resource investigator and completer finisher. You can argue for both. Is that you've got one going, come on, let's do something brilliant, idea next, right, lots of energy. And somebody's like, yeah, but how are we doing that? What's the practical implication? Oh, it doesn't matter. Come on, this is a great idea. Let's go for it. Yeah, but you know, what are the steps? Stop it. We need to get something actually written down. We need a process in place for that to happen. So we have an almost opposite there with these two here. I'm just going to show my screen again. But that would be okay as long, see that last bit, they know each other well. As long as they know the roles that each of them are actually going to play. Because you can see between them that actually, apart from completer finisher, which isn't too bad, it's just over 50, and perhaps teamwork is not particularly high either, but they've got the other roles, seem not too bad between them. Then we look at their secondary team roles. Make a good working pair when involved in determining strategy and policies. So here we have the monitor evaluator of Sam T coming in there and the coordinator of Chris R. So both really good at looking at that overview, assessing options, looking at the bigger, broader picture. So there are some wonderful ways that Sam and Chris can work together. However, I will just have a little bit of a disclaimer here. We've only said things about their top 2 team roles, and we are more than our top 2 team roles. So what we have really given you at the bottom there are just some questions that you could ask, because we don't know everything. We also don't know if these two people just absolutely hate each other with a passion. You don't know that. There's personal relationships that, at Belbin we can help a lot, but we can't help with everything. So what we need to do is to make sure that we've given you enough questions here to really, it's just to start that conversation going, isn't it? But how does this change if the relationship is different? So here we have Sam T and Chris R again. But this time, Sam is the manager of Chris. So what basis, what difference is this going to make to the relationship? Well, actually, as you can see, Sam, who is high implementer, is going to be the manager of Chris. So there could be some problems, the fact that Sam just needs Chris to get on and do things in a very organised type way. And they're just off with that resource investigator. They're never there. And you can understand why this might cause problems as colleagues. It's okay because they have an understanding of where each person is bringing in. But if you are a manager with high implementer, you might struggle because you may find that Chris is just never around. And that could cause some problems. However, you both do still have that broad perspective. So this could be that area of common ground, that commonality that actually allows you to manage Chris more effectively. So really, what we're looking at here is how do those relationships change depending on who's managing who? Let's have a look at what happens if Chris is the manager. So if Sam T is managed by Chris, again, this may work quite well. Let's have a look what it says here. If Chris can find enough time to ensure that Sam is well informed and clear about what is required. Otherwise, Sam may feel that Chris's range of activities will not result in any useful outcomes. Now, I don't know if Jill's still on this webinar, but I think sometimes she feels like this with me, is that I've got all these different things going on, and I can tell sometimes Jill's just sitting there going, well, this is all very interesting, but there's so many different things going on. There's so many plates spinning. What is actually going to be the outcome of this? Cynicism sometimes, but again, that commonality with that monitor evaluator and coordinator is going to allow perhaps for some overlap. These reports are great for conversations. How are they used? One of our distributors actually uses these in a really good way. They print them all out and they have speed dating. And so everybody has the relevant page in front of them and they go and find each person and they have just 2 minutes to talk about their relationship and how they may work together. And then they ring a bell and then they go to the next one. And it is a real great icebreaker, actually, especially if you've never worked with people before. forget about everything. Let's just look at our behavioural contributions. You know, where could potentially there be some issues? Where are we going to enjoy ourselves? Are we going to enjoy ourselves a little bit too much? Will we need to crack on at some point? So really looking at these reports can help facilitate those individual relationships within the team and can really help the manager. One, if they had it printed for everybody that they were managing, they will understand where those pain points might be, and also where those areas of commonality where they can really emphasise for when they do need to be really, really productive. All of the people can also have these, how to best manage their manager. I always think that's always a good one. Print it for everybody and understand as well where those pain points are. Don't necessarily be the manager. Everybody can have these. Okay, I'm just going to stop sharing there. Actually, 1 second, if you wouldn't mind, excuse me, would you mind just shutting that door, please? Because I can hear all of the disturbance. This is the benefit of having your 15-year-old working in the same office as you. I can ask her to help me out occasionally. This is fab. Okay, so with those working relationship reports, you can generate those. Again, if you have the full interplay system, you can generate these free of charge, as many as you like. Go for it. Keep them online, might be quite nice because you're not, it's not so many trees being cut down. Otherwise, they are £15 for each relationship, and if you need quite a few of them, don't worry, we can offer you a discount on that, so it won't add up too much. If you are going to be doing this with lots and lots of people, we would suggest really Interplace is the best option for you. It's definitely the most cost effective. Okay, crikey, I've been talking for quite some time. I'm going to have a quick look now at some of the questions. How do you balance people's naturally strong team roles with outdated, restricted job descriptions and positions? That's a hard one, isn't it? Am I allowed to say just bin the job descriptions? I'm not allowed to say that, no. Get them to review them. Find a manager who's prepared to put that all to one side and say, right, where is the best contribution you can make? I think sometimes job titles get in the way of so many different things. I always ask at a workshop for job titles to be left at the door, along with egos, because this is all about everybody within that team making a contribution and the best contribution they can. If you look at Gallup, for example, they say that if somebody is able to play to their strengths at least once a day, they are 6 times more likely to be engaged in their job. So why hang on to these outdated job descriptions? I can only do this, even though I'm actually brilliant at doing that. Let's stand up. Let's see if we can make a change by challenging that. They're only there because people don't challenge sometimes, one could argue. But that's my shape of behaviour coming out, and I do apologise. Okay. Any other questions? I'm going to quickly go to the Q&A box. No, thank you very much for listening. Everybody's kept to the Zoom webinar. I was a bit flippant there, but I feel very strongly that we are only... Lives are quite short, aren't they? And we spend a lot of our time actually at work. And so what we want to do, and what the responsibility, I think, of us managers and ourselves, we have to take personal responsibility for this as well, is to find jobs that make our hearts sing, is to find jobs that align with our strengths, because we owe it to ourselves, our managers owe it to us, and so do the organisations who recruited us in the first place. So really try and find that alignment between people's strengths and the work and the jobs that you can do. And I'll tell you what, once you start getting people around a table or virtually, what you will find is people suddenly say, I know you're good. I hate this bit, actually. Would you mind? People start, chopping and changing and distributing bits of their job and giving them quite willingly to others in exchange for work back. You'll be amazed at how receptive teams can be to that. Okay. Thank you very much for joining. 1 minute, that's it now, it's 3 o'clock, press the off button. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Like I say, this will be recorded and sent out to you. I hope I've given you some idea on how to use those team reports, how not just to sling them at the team and say, there you go, but to actually use them for meeting the objectives of the team and to making them as useful as possible. And for that last time, I'm just going to share my screen because I love this, and we're just going to keep going back to it again and again. Simply putting together a number of people and expecting them to work as a team is really not enough. It's up to us, it's up to you, it's up to others to ensure that we really do help people be the best they possibly can and make those really fabulous contributions for those teams to be high performing and to be with meaning as well. So thank you very much indeed for your time, and have a good rest of the afternoon. Thank you.